Hello there. Dr. Bill Crawford here, psychologist, speaker, author of 7 books, host of 2 PBS specials. Here again to bring you another tip on how to help you create the life you want. Specifically, how to use my life from the top of the mind system to bring more clarity, confidence, creativity to everything you do. Today I want to look at the concept of what we pay attention to and how that affects our life. There's a quote that I'm sending out to those 6,000 folks on my quote list. By the way, if you would like to receive one of my favorite quotes each week, along with 2 or 3 paragraphs about how to apply that quote to life, just go to my website, billcrawfordphd.com, or just Google Bill Crawford Ph.D. I'll come up on the first page. Hit the subscribe button. It's free, and each week I will send you one of these, my favorite quotes, along with, again, 2 or 3 paragraphs about how to apply that quote in our life. This week's quote says, we really need to pay attention to what we're paying attention to in order to determine whether the payment is worth the cost. So let's break that down. Number one, the whole concept of that we are paying attention to something. See, that's different than something is grabbing our attention or taking our attention. It's a very common phrase, but I think we want to really examine that and ask ourselves the question, really? Do we want to give other people or situations, especially those difficult people, difficult situations, the power to grab our attention, to take our attention, to take control of what we're paying attention to? Because if we hold on to the belief that something or someone can grab our attention, it means they're doing it. It's coming from the outside. For those of you who follow my life from the top of the mind philosophy, you know this isn't true. You know this middle part of the brain, the limbic system, that part of the brain that's kind of always been responsible for keeping us alive on the planet, is paying attention, is giving attention to things it determines as dangerous. You know, a long, long time ago, if we were in a tribe and one member was having a birthday and another member was attacking us with a spear, well, we would pay a whole lot more attention to that person attacking us with a spear because that threatened our survival. Even as kids, sometimes if mom or dad were like really angry or drunk or whatever, and they were on the rampage versus, hey, there's a great movie playing, we would pay attention to that because that was indeed dangerous. And yet today, I think we can recognize that very few of the situations we find ourselves in today are truly dangerous, are truly situations we can react to from a fight or flight perspective. And yet, the limbic system doesn't know this. This middle part of the brain, limbic system, is very small, it's not very smart, it's very reactive, and it tends to kind of scan the environment for anything it thinks is dangerous and react to it by throwing us into the brainstem, where we go into either fight or flight. That's where anger, resentment, depression, worry, stress, frustration comes from. Now, I'm not saying that there's nothing worth paying attention to. My wife, Georgia, was telling me a situation where the other day she was at a intersection, wanting to turn left, waiting for the arrow to turn green. The arrow turned green, and something told her to wait. Now, the cars in back of her were honking, but something told her to wait. And about that time, a car zipped through the intersection, totally running the red light. Had she actually just gone with that, ignored that, she would have been hit by the car. So, you know, sometimes we get this sixth sense. We get a sense of, you know, this person really isn't really trustworthy. This situation feels weird in some ways. So I think paying attention to that is worth the cost because sometimes it can keep us from getting into a situation that is dangerous or problematic. However, when we are dealing with a clerk that doesn't give us the service we want, or some person who happens to cut us off in the freeway, and after we kind of adjust our speed, then we really get upset with them, or just someone in our office or school or home that we kind of get upset with, we are paying attention in a way that I think isn't worth the cost. Because the cost is throwing us into this lower 20% of the brain, triggering cortisol. Cortisol rushes throughout our body, shutting down our immune system. We have more susceptibility to illness. Shutting down our digestive system, that's where ulcers come from, shutting down our production of protein and increasing our production of glucose. Because in a fight or flight situation, glucose is where we get our energy. But because we're not in a fight or flight situation, we just sit there producing more and more and more glucose. Glucose is sugar. Sugar, when it's not burned off, turns to fat. I mean, there's just all kinds of things that are happening, in my humble opinion, that aren't worth the cost. So what if we took more control, had more power, more influence over what we are paying attention to, that we only pay attention to things, situations that are worth the cost? How can we know? Well, we can ask ourselves, am I paying attention to this person or situation on purpose? Have I decided to? Is this how I want to be defined? I'm a person who pays attention to these kind of people and situations because they really help me create the life I want. Or would we recommend this to someone we love? Would we encourage someone we love or teach them to pay attention to this particular person or situation? Or do we find ourselves paying attention to people and situations that frankly aren't worth the cost? There's the question I use sometimes when I'm doing my Dealing with Difficult People seminar. When someone's talking about a difficult person, I'll say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important, how powerful do you want that person to be in your life? And often that person will say 0, which makes a lot of sense. And yet, when we are paying attention to them, when we're running them over and over in our mind, we're making them the most important person in our life. And the payment isn't worth the cost. So how about we become more aware? There's a quote from Albert Einstein I use in my seminars. Problems cannot be solved at the same level of awareness that created them. How about we become more aware of what we're paying attention to? And if we determine that payment is worth the cost, then absolutely we do that. If we determine it isn't, then we switch it to something that is worth the cost. We don't just try to stop paying attention to that. We start paying attention to what is worth the cost, what helps us create the life we want, what we would recommend to those we love. If you haven't noticed, each week I bring you one of these videos. If you like the video, please hit the like button. Share it with your friends if you think it's valuable. If you haven't subscribed on YouTube, feel free to do that. I also put these on podcasts on iTunes, Facebook, Pinterest, LinkedIn, all that stuff. So follow me on any of those that you like. And if you like what you hear, please let me know. If you have a comment or question, put it down below. I try to read all of them and respond when I can. In the meantime, here is to you, bringing more clarity about what's worth the cost, what payment is worth the cost, what are we paying attention to, more clarity, confidence, creativity to everything you do, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.